Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto was taken by Yoda and trained to become a Jedi Knight. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. 1 week later. Naruto didn't know how many days had passed. He didn't even know what time it was. No outside light breached the walls of his holding cell. Frankly, he didn't care anymore. His mind had been stuck replaying what had happened over and over again. His broken heart felt like it had been sucked from him, leaving nothing but a hollow feeling behind. He had lost the person he cared about the most, his only family. There were no words spoken, neither loud or in his mind's eye. His reddened eyelids burned and cracked from the result of his endless well of tears that had since run dry, and his skin had been left rash and blistered in the aftermath of the cascading corrosive chakra. His rage had subsided, but the anger and pain hadn't left with it. Siri was gone, and he had failed to save her. He failed to stop Grievous. Naruto was so lost in his thoughts that he failed to notice the door opening. He briefly wondered what next would be asked by his captors. Naruto Uzumaki, he heard the voice of Palpatine, the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. His words were terse and laden with disdain and disappointment. Looking up, the blonde Jedi saw the Chancellor, along with a handful of other senators, court officials, and a cadre of military police. Naruto didn't say anything, he simply looked back down towards the floor. There was nothing to say. Having overheard the guards, he already knew the fate that awaited him. He was somewhat surprised that the Chancellor had come himself to a holding cell. Normally this would be done at an arraignment in court, but you have been deemed too dangerous to transport. So we've brought a constable here to charge you personally. Palpatine continued before stepping aside to let the legal speakers begin their misguided diatribe. General Naruto Uzumaki, you are being charged for espionage and treason against the Galactic Republic, as well as multiple counts of murder in the first degree as a result of your actions. You will be, the constable droned on, but Naruto had very quickly tuned him out. Not the least bit interested into hearing more of this farce. To the side, Palpatine could barely contain his glee. He passed it off as a look of revulsion to his vigilant entourage. But he didn't know how much longer he would be able to control himself standing in front of his defeated foe. Finally, would you be rid of this blonde nuisance? Do you understand these charges as they have been explained to you? The constable had finished his tirade, and Palpatine stepped forward once more, placing a hand on the man's shoulder and shaking his head. He knew that Naruto felt so defeated right now that he wouldn't speak a word, so Palpatine took the opportunity to gloat. Indirectly, at least. I'll admit it was a clever move, activating your ship's distress beacon to signal your location to the Separatists. Ingenious planning to use interdiction technology on an old ship. The evidence gathered from the destroyed Separatist cruiser backs it up. Your entire dialogue with Grievous was recorded in the ship's communication log. Palpatine began to weave the web of lies even tighter. The transmissions had been faked, of course. Bits and pieces of dialogue picked up from military comms, intercepted personal messages, altered recordings of his meetings with the Chancellor, and of course some good acting from Grievous and Dooku. Naruto desperately wanted to reach out with the Force and wring the life out of the Chancellor's neck, but the second he tried anything a shock would be sent through his restraints to subdue him. Don't you have anything to say in your defense? Palpatine questioned, still playing his facade of a kind old man, appearing as a voice of reason, albeit angered and short-tempered by the apparent betrayal. Naruto, however, still said nothing. He knew that everything was working against him. Somebody very powerful wanted him gone or dead, somebody high up the chain of command. And if high command was compromised, who was to say that the Senate wasn't as Dooku had proclaimed? Naruto wasn't the brightest bulb, but he wasn't inattentive. He had read Obi-Wan's report that recited word for word Dooku's accusation that his master had infiltrated the Senate. He had initially disregarded it a grandiose bluster, but now he was beginning to see potential truth in that matter. So he chose to keep his mouth shut. The course would have a field day with anything he said, but part of him was just wanted to admit to these false accusations, just to stop hearing the lies about Siri. He wondered if they would execute him sooner if he pleaded guilty, but he still remained silent. Then your trial will begin tomorrow. Palpatine stated as Naruto failed to respond. With everything said and done, Palpatine and his group turned and left, leaving Naruto in the darkness once more. This is all my fault, he thought as he thought back to everything that had happened. On board the Crucible, 1 week earlier. The roar of a beast echoed throughout the ship as Grievous slowly backed away. Not because he was fearful, but because he was being forcefully pushed back. The sheer power flowing from the blonde was enough to make Sidious look like a puddle of water. What is this? Grievous thought as witnessed the blonde Jedi started to transform. His skin started to peel away as a red energy started to cover him as a tail started to grow, then another. Before Grievous knew it, there were 3 tails that had grown out of the blonde. His eyes looked like a twisted reflection of his own, and his mouth had grown long fangs. The red cloud completely covered him, and that is when the transformed Jedi charged Grievous, his eyes widened at the speed. He didn't even get the chance to raise his sabers, as the blonde literally punched him right in the chest, denting his chassis and sending him flying into the. Grievous went into a furious coughing spree as he wheezed and sputtered his way to his feet. Grievous rushed Naruto with his 2 remaining blades. On the way to his target, he picked up a third with his foot and ignited the violet saber, striking fiercely at greatest speed he could manage. The enraged Naruto roared louder in response to this offense. He began ducking and dodging between each blow, having little trouble avoiding Grievous's lightning-fast attacks. Calling his discarded blue saber back to him, Naruto struck a single mighty blow in between Grievous's sabers. The impact tore at the mechanical joints, damaging them. Grievous felt his speed slow as the servos began to wear down as a result of the change in structure and load. Grievous kept up his offensive as best he could, but it was no use. Naruto was slowly inching his way forward. Grievous's blades were batted away, and his chassis kept getting newer and deeper scratches in it. Grievous knew that this, whatever it was, had turned the tables in the blonde's favor. Even with 3 lightsabers, he found himself outmatched against Naruto's renewed vigor and seemingly limitless strength. I have to escape. Grievous thought to himself frantically as he tried to disengage from the duel, but he was grabbed and yanked back forcefully by a giant claw of red energy and thrown into the ground. Turning onto his back, he came face to face against the red monster who roared and brought his clawed hands down and started to tear through Grievous' exoskeleton. The injured droid general tried to block the Jedi's wrath with his arms, but it was no use. Mustering his strength, Grievous leapt to his feet, flinging Naruto off him. He turned to run again, but found that the Jedi's claw of energy had a hold of his arm and wouldn't let go. Grievous was willing to make a sacrifice, so he continued to pull against Naruto until the limb had been torn right of the cyborg, who cried out in pain. Grievous finally managed to amass some distance, and began using his mechanical feet to sprint down the hole. He quickly reached for a transmitter on his person. "Fire on the ship. Now," Grievous ordered. Firing upon the ship would act as a distraction for him to use to escape. It should be able to hold out for at least a minute. He began to run, but once more he was stopped. This time he felt his throat being constricted as it was raised into the air. Turning around, he saw that the Jedi was holding him, choking him with the Force. Like many others before him, Grievous tried to claw away at the invisible hand choking him, but it was no use as he felt his life fading. Just then the ship shook violently, throwing the Jedi to the ground and releasing Grievous, who coughed, but quickly ran for the shuttle amidst his respiratory distress. The transformed Naruto roared as he turned to look at the offender who had stopped him. He looked out of the ship to see the Providence dreadnought opening fire on them. He roared once more as he reached out to the Force, the dark side feeding off of his negative emotions, the rage amplifying his power. Reaching out, he took imaginary hold of the cruiser, and literally began to make a crushing gesture with his hands. To Grievous's surprise, his flagship began to buckle and implode as it was torn apart by the will of the Force. However, it wasn't enough. Naruto's onslaught didn't stop as he began to do the same to one of the munificent frigates. It didn't last nearly as long, and the fuel tanks had ruptured, causing the ship to explode spectacularly. "Naruto, stop." Ahsoka, who had been observing this carnage the entire time, intervened to stop Naruto's conniption, but he ignored her as he kept rampaging through the ship, cutting through armor, wires, electric components. A couple of Padawans in his way were injured as they were thrown back, suffering some burns from the corrosive energy, and they were bleeding pretty heavily from the claws of energy digging away at their flesh. "Naruto, stop. This isn't you," she pleaded with him, trying to get him back to his senses. He stopped for a second as he looked at her, but roared with extreme ferocity, and began to charge straight at her. Ahsoka quickly dived out of the way, but the other younglings weren't so nimble, and were hit head-on by the blonde's mad rush. They were thrown about the ship and collided with many of the crates and tools strewn about, inflicting further injuries. Ahsoka definitely heard someone's bone snap from the impact. Ahsoka tried a different, more direct approach. Instead of calling out to him, she simply stood in his path. Naruto started charging again, but soon ground to a halt when she pushed him back with the Force. He began to thrash about, not liking being held down one bit. After a few seconds, his movements began to soothe and calm. Ahsoka took that as a positive signal as she slowly walked up to him. "Come on, Naruto, fight whatever has control over you. This isn't you," she reasoned as she got a bit closer to him, the red energy starting to fade. "That's it, just calm down. It's over, you beat Grievous." He ran away. She encouraged him as she got even closer, to close as Naruto stumbled, his rage seemingly fighting back against clear-headed judgment. In the confusion, a claw of energy swatted Ahsoka away as the red energy quickly started to recede. Gasping in pain as she slammed into the wall, she checked over her wound, but it wasn't serious. Only light bleeding along her stomach, but the back of her head was killing her. She was just as grateful as she was worried that she slipped into unconsciousness a few moments later. Later, Ahsoka could tell the room spinning, even with her eyes closed. Wait, nope. That was just her concussion talking. The room and ship were perfectly still, except for the flickering power cables and dangling wall panels. Ahsoka looked around the room to see the unconscious Naruto, and what looked like a makeshift triage room. Hyang had done his best to treat the injured Padawans with the tools he had, but the ship wasn't equipped with more than basic first aid. He had to use low-intensity plasma torches to close a few of the nastier wounds when he ran out of stitches. Hyang was by no means a medical droid, so his work was very rough, and the younglings would probably have some very nasty scars after healing. What happened? Ahsoka asked, still delirious from her pounding head injury. General Grievous attacked the ship, and Master Uzumaki lost control of himself when Master Tachi was killed. His rampage disabled the ship and injured everyone aboard. Hyang answered. I know that. I mean, did anyone get our distress signal? Ahsoka questioned the old droid, who nodded. The ship is dropping out of hyperspace. Hyang responded. The Separatists had quickly retreated once Grievous was aboard. The Republic had thankfully arrived less than 12 hours later, as Naruto had damaged their life support systems, and they would be running out of oxygen soon, and the old droid was not equipped to help all the wounded. Ahsoka sighed as she felt the ship shake, being taken in by the Venator's tractor beams, and docked in the ventral hangar. Not much sooner did a platoon of clones and Jedi Masters Windu, Yoda, and Adi Galli walk in. The three masters were all aghast at the grisly scene before them. What happened here? Windu spoke in shock. They had come across many dead Padawans and destroyed droids. They saw Ahsoka and several other Padawans wounded. They even saw molten and shredded pieces of white exoskeleton. Naruto's robes had evaporated to reveal his reddened skin, only a smoking wrap around his midsection was left to give him warmth. Adi Galli stepped forward into the room and had to resist the urge to burst into tears. Siri was laying dead, a large puncture wound through her stomach that looked like a lightsaber wound. Adi walked over to Siri and caressed her former Padawan's face. Yoda closed his eyes at the carnage. Seeing the younglings dead brought him great pain. The ship was secured quickly, and the Venator made the jump back to Republic space. Adi knelt down to speak to the Togruta Padawan. Ahsoka, tell us what happened. She was half asking, half demanding. Ahsoka opened her mouth to talk again, but a tremendous migraine swelled up in her head, and she drifted back into unconsciousness. Jedi Council Chambers, present day. When the Republic had arrived, and Naruto had awoken from his rage-induced rampage, he did his best to explain the events. He reasoned that the Separatists must have placed a tracker on the ship, but no such tracker was found. Naruto tried to suggest that it must have been blown off when Grievous's cruiser opened fire on the ship, but much of what he said fell on deaf ears. He was emotionally distraught and quick to anger in his defense of Siri. His state of mind itself had been compromised, and none of his former teachers and friends could get through him to get the answers they needed. However, the situation in the Senate was much different. Sidious moved fast in the following week, using all of the political clout he had amassed over the past 10 years, to hasten proceedings as greatly as possible. Pinning Naruto with multiple life sentences for the first 2 crimes would end his career forever. However, the 3rd crime that would result in his required execution would need a trial by the Senate. Sidious couldn't have him continuing to hypothesize and speak ill of the Republic leadership. Someone might listen eventually, and that could cause problems for him. But before he was to be brought before the Senate, the Jedi Order had scheduled him for an internal hearing, in an effort to delay the proceedings. Palpatine relented, but he gave them limited time to deliberate. The council was currently holding a meeting on the important matter. We all felt the dark side, it strung in the boy. Even if it was just for a moment before, it seems like it's here to stay. Windu spoke as everyone thought over his words. But it's not from him, exactly. From what I can ascertain, the seal might have temporarily failed in a moment of extreme distress, allowing the spirit within him to partly take control over him. Plo Koon reasoned. Naruto had never before used the dark side, and he was far more emotional attached than others. Still, Plo Koon though that something was wrong. That may be, but we cannot overlook this. What if he loses control again? What if the seal fails for good the next time? I don't think there was a force sensitive in the galaxy that didn't sense that ripple of dark side energy. If the beast were to somehow escape, it would be catastrophic. Mundi questioned through his hologram as Plo frowned. Those were good points that he had no counter to. The seal used was native to Naruto's homeworld, and it was extremely complex. They had tried at times to research and investigate it, but had only come up with answer to the basic purposes of its components, and still lacked understanding as to how it actually worked. Not to mention it was made through chakra, so they did not have the means to strengthen it, should it weaken further. The fact also remains that he was unable to resist its power in the first place. His connection to Master Tachi was too strong. It's possible that he gave in willingly. CC Tien was ever the harsh critic of the boy. He was too young and too juvenile to be considered on the level of a master in his opinion. We should have never trained him in the first place. I let my judgment be clouded when I agreed to promote him to master. I insisted it was too soon. Rancisis was still going on his own rant of not training Naruto. He was coming around to liking the boy, but this recent event had made him revert to his old ways. Now he was fiercely against the blonde, again. You've certainly shown us your lack of hesitation in rapidly switching sides, Master Rancisis. Shakti countered rudely. Like Plo Koon, she was firmly in support of Naruto. Surely we can rehabilitate him somehow. Kid Fisto questioned them. Naruto was once his student and as such, he would try to keep the actions taken against him limited. He did not believe that Naruto would be capable of killing Siri, his sister in all but blood. Master Gallia herself had her doubts. Aren't you all sidestepping the fact that this trial is for alleged treason? We can determine if he's fallen to the dark side later. We should follow through on his accusations first, regardless of his potential failings. But the Lothian Jedi Master spoke. There was no way, in her mind, that Naruto would have willingly allowed Siri to be a casualty of the war. There is not time for this. Intend on convicting him, the Chancellor is. Yoda interjected. He did not believe that Naruto was guilty of treason, and the boy would never join Dooku. But his falling to the dark side was a primary concern that Yoda had before he had taken him from his home. But now he felt that training him could have been a mistake. Before, Naruto was a boy with a lot of potential that would have had to discover on his own. But now Naruto was a trained master with combat skills that put him amongst the members of the Jedi Council. Superior in combat skill to both friends and dissenters on the council alike. He was every bit the equal to two of his former masters Plo and Kit Fisto, and wasn't too far behind the third Shakti. The Senate is also in a rush to sweep this under the rug to minimize the publicity. The irregulars are up in arms and deserting in droves. Naruto is a hero to them, and they have no one to look up to if he's imprisoned. Even Peel was somewhere in the middle with Adi Gallia. He recognized Naruto's value to the war effort, if he wasn't actually a traitor, that is. And I think they are wise to do so. I don't plan to stand by and let them execute him, but we can appeal his life sentence later if we find him innocent. Windu tried to sate the opposition with the middle ground, and this seemed acceptable to Shakti and Kit Fisto as a temporary measure, but his biggest supporter did not take it so lightly. If we wait to move, it's likely that the courts will only hear an appeal on reducing his sentence, not overturning his conviction. They want this matter gone, forever. He'd get 10 years instead of life for being innocent. Plo wasn't going to compromise on this. Either they would support him fully or not at all. The Color Jedi Master made it clear that the latter choice would result in the loss of not one but two great masters from the Order. If the Order would not help his former Padawan seek justice, then he would do it alone. Stop being a child about this, Master Plo. I urge you to see reason. CC Tyne's tone had begun to get out of line. This issue was going nowhere, and it was only generating tension between members of the council. Master Obi-Wan, we shall send. Close are the two of them. The resolve of Master Uzumaki, testing, it needs. Yoda spoke up from his seat as everyone turned to him. Yoda had brought Naruto to the temple 18 years ago. He was the one who had pushed for the boy to be trained at such an old age. No doubt the gravity of the situation fell heavy on the old Grandmaster's shoulders. His words also drew attention to the uncharacteristically quiet Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan was very close with Naruto indeed. The two were almost brothers, much like Siri had adopted Naruto as her foster brother. But these were not one-way streets, and Obi-Wan was extremely close with Siri as well, to the point that they had once considered leaving the Order together, not unlike the situation with Satine. Obi-Wan stroked his beard, sensing the eyes drawn upon him by the Grandmaster's words. His feelings on the matter were precarious to say the least. Obi-Wan was deeply confused by what he was thinking. Unlike the others who were arguing that Naruto would have never let Siri get killed, Obi-Wan felt that if it was any other Jedi he would have believed Naruto's story. Not that Naruto would have let Siri get killed, but why did it have to be Siri of all people? Why was it the factor keeping him from wholly believing Naruto? Obi-Wan's thoughts had not stopped racing for the past week. He could not abandon his personal feelings for Siri or Naruto. He did not know what would be the subjective good, so he had to go with the objective. Perhaps that would give him clarity. Fine, I'll do it. Obi-Wan agreed after a few minutes of careful consideration. Master Plo, if we follow through with this we must know that you will concur with our decision. You cannot leave the Order to defend Naruto yourself simply because you don't like the answer we come up with. Mace Windu was again the voice of mediation, and Plo Koon nodded reluctantly. Fine, but I need to be there. I'm returning to Coruscant. Master Rancisis, will you take my place as High General on Salakami? The snake-like Jedi Master agreed with a nod. He would at least do his fellow master this gratitude. Losing a student was not easy, no matter how troublesome they had been. This would be much easier if we could just ask the younglings what happened. Plo had his doubts that Naruto was of the right mind to be tested. Every Jedi struggles with controlling strong emotions, and Naruto's were stronger than most. But he saw that as more and more middle ground was carved out in their debate, Naruto was losing the support of the other masters. This was at least a chance for him to make a case for himself. We're so simple, but Grievous did a number on them. Only 8 survived and none of them are in any condition to speak. 2 of them are still in critical condition. It's unsure if they will survive the injuries Naruto inflicted on them in his madness. Windu retorted. That was the most distressing thing about the whole incident. That they had lost 10, perhaps eventually a dozen of the most promising initiates. Naruto had even injured Ahsoka, the Tigrita girl that he had begged and harassed them for days to take on as a Padawan. But with Plo's acceptance, everyone had agreed to Master Yoda's idea. They needed to see if Naruto did indeed have a growing connection to the dark side, and they could not stall the Senate any longer. The Public Judiciary Central Detention Center, the next day. Obi-Wan sighed as he stood outside the cell that held his friend. He had never expected Naruto of all people to use the dark side. No, he didn't expect him to allow Siri to die either, yet the evidence would say otherwise. If Naruto had fallen, then just how far? This was the question on the minds of most of the council, and Obi-Wan might be one of the only people who could bring him back if he was too far gone. Steeling himself, he entered the cell. Entering the cell, he saw Naruto, sitting in the cell, his face down looking at the ground. Obi-Wan thought he could see a glimmer of hope in his friend's eyes. I know you're not in the mood to talk, so I'm only going to ask you this one question, and I'm only going to ask it one time. Did you kill Siri and those younglings or, through your actions, allow them to be killed? The true reason Obi-Wan only wanted to say these words once was because they were too painful even for him. Naruto wrenched his hands into fists, the glimmer fading as fast as it had appeared. So even Obi-Wan didn't believe him. Then that was the final straw. Of all the people he thought would accuse him, Obi-Wan was the one person that Naruto had thought would know better. If Obi-Wan didn't believe him, then the only one of the council that could have possibly believed his story would have been Plo Koon, but Naruto knew that his former master wouldn't betray the sense of justice that he and his students held firm to. Obi-Wan waited for several minutes, but his words still elicited no response from the imprisoned Jedi. So it was true, then. Obi-Wan didn't want to believe it, so despite what he had said earlier, he had to test the blonde more. I always knew that you sympathized a bit with the separatists. Even I think they have a bit of a point, but Dooku is a Sith, Naruto. For you to actually betray the Republic, the Order, your sister for his cause. What happened to becoming Grand Master? Obi-Wan questioned him, but Naruto only writhed more. It tore at his heart, but Naruto couldn't stand his words any longer. He wanted nothing more than to break free and choke Obi-Wan, until he could say no more of these lies. His friend and brother was also accusing him of betrayal. Naruto's despair had quickly turned to anger, and he rose to his feet. His slow stride intimidating Obi-Wan a bit, but the Jedi Master held firm when he remembered Naruto was restrained. Naruto opened his mouth to respond, and Obi-Wan nearly lit up, but instead a wad of spit spewed forward, landing on Obi-Wan's robes, as he looked down at the imprisoned Jedi. Obi-Wan sighed and removed his cloak. He would have to wash it later. That won't scare me away, Naruto. Obi-Wan stated as Naruto kept quiet as Obi-Wan walked closer. The tracker, getting those Jedi younglings and Siri, what did you hope to achieve? You were the only one who knew the route you were taking, and I doubt that Siri would do something stupid enough to get herself killed. Obi-Wan questioned him further, his frustrations growing. Perhaps he wasn't the best choice after all. Answer me, Naruto. Why would you kill someone that was like a sister to both of us? Obi-Wan questioned again as Naruto closed his eyes shut as tears started to form once more. He clenched his teeth as hard as he could to keep his voice bottled up. I didn't kill her. Stop lying. I guess she meant nothing to you then. Obi-Wan stated as Naruto's eyes opened wide at the accusation. How dare they think that? She was everything to him, his world, his family. He would never harm her, and yet everyone believed that he did. No one listened to him. His anger, rage, returned once more as his body swelled with a hint of red energy, and his eyes filled with slitted red rage, as Kurama's power came to the surface unchecked. Obi-Wan took a step back reflexively. Seeing Naruto's red eyes staring back at him with so much anger, he gulped. Kurama's power invited the dark side, and from the slitted pupils cascaded the sickly Sith yellow. Obi-Wan shivered in a mixture of fear and sadness as he quickly exited the cell. He definitely felt it, that was the full brunt of the dark side. Naruto fell back to his knees on his cell, before settling into a sitting position from his homeworld that was both formal and meditative in nature. He again managed to hold back his sorrow a third time, but he felt another weight on his shoulders. The weight of a friend's abandonment. Obi-Wan quickly made his way to the visitors' lounge, and as he entered he could hear the chatter of the present members of the Jedi Council, already discussing the sudden dark side spike that every Jedi worth their salt would have just felt. It definitely seems he does indeed have a connection to the dark side. I don't fully blame him for being this upset, but even if it was an accident that got Siri killed, that doesn't absolve him of his treason. Obi-Wan had finally come to a conclusion, and everyone grimaced in dissatisfaction. Naruto was one of their best, be it as a Jedi or general. He alone had brought victory for the jaws of defeat many times. To lose him was a severe blow to the Order and the Republic. Yes, but what should we do about it? You saw him just as I. He was clearly in pain. He's not able to talk about Siri yet. Plo Koon questioned. He didn't like to play favor student, but the evidence against his student was mounting. He had taught the blonde everything he knew, and to see him too down such a path. He could not allow that. Beside the Senate shall, in his trials. But first, our grave decision we must inform him of. Yoda responded while hobbling away as all the Jedi Masters looked to the old Grand Master. This was a dark mark on the Order's history. Many younglings had fallen, a master had been slain, and another was on a dark path. Jedi Temple, 2 days later. It had been a couple days since Obi-Wan had visited him, a couple days since he had lashed out at his former comrade. He had denied it all. He would never harm Siri. He was so infuriated by Obi-Wan's words. That man once had a relationship with Siri, but that was temporary, and they were only friends afterwards. Obi-Wan's bond with Siri was not as strong as Naruto's bond with her. He somehow still didn't understand. The two were siblings in all but blood. The two of them had fought to the death to keep the other safe and for Obi-Wan to levy such accusations. Damn that old fool. What's the point, he thought as he walked, unable to find the strength to be mad. He was currently emotionally spent as he was led to the room to see the council. They had run out of time, and Palpatine was demanding that they release him, so that the Senate may judge him. What do you mean no points? Siri would have wanted you to fight. She would have wanted you to move past this. To achieve your dream. Another part of him voiced its opinion. This inner battle had been raging on for a long time. But there is nothing left, he thought once more as he kept on walking for what seemed ages until the guards in front of him stopped before the door. He walked forward as the door opened, allowing him in as the guards followed. Flanking him were 4 temple guards as he entered a dark room where he stood in the center. Jedi Master Naruto Uzumaki, you have been charged with crimes against the Republic. How will you plead? Windu questioned him as Naruto looked at the council assembled before him. His argumentative mind had come to a stop, and he found clarity in that moment. In order to win one fight, he might have to lose another. Not guilty. He finally spoke after 2 weeks. He would never commit such a crime. He would never harm Siri, let alone kill her. Surely they would see at least that. I would advise against that. The evidence is heavily against you. Not to mention the taint the dark side surrounds you. You know that we cannot remain silent on this fact should the courts call us to testify. Windu continued as the others let him carry out the hearing. Regardless of his connections to the dark side, the majority of the council agreed with Plo Koon that something was amiss. But with the dark side, nothing could be taken as it seemed. They knew one answer they had to give him, but the other was yet to be determined. None of that matters. I had nothing to do with the separatist attack. I was as surprised as anyone on board to see separatist ships. As for the dark side energy, Naruto trailed off. What good would it do to tell them anything? He let his emotions get the better of him. He willingly used Kurama's power, which the dark side was attracted to. The truth was that he did use the dark side. He wanted to kill Grievous so badly at that moment in time that nothing was going to stand in his way. The distress beacon was activated on the ship that allowed the separatists to use it as a signal to coordinate their attack. Was it not you who activated it? Coyote Mundi's hologram questioned him as Naruto looked up at the Jedi Council before him. Of course I was the one who activated it. He answered, getting tired of being questioned again and again about crimes he did not commit and his loyalty. Had he lost not enough of comrades to prove his worth? Had he not cut down enough droids to prove that he was not the enemy? So you admit that you aided Grievous? CC Tien grumbled out, his hard-headed nature getting the better of him. No, I said I activated the distress beacon. I didn't say when or why. Don't put words in my mouth if you want the truth, Tien. I activated the distress beacon after Grievous had begun his attack. I told you all of this already. Naruto's disrespectful tone had elicited a snarl from the Itachi Jedi Master, and left a bad taste in the mouths of other masters. But they knew that Tien had jumped to conclusions, and Naruto was in no mood for that kind of chicanery. This was something that they would let slide. We know you used the dark side, even now you still have a connection to it. Rancisis' hologram accused and Naruto frowned. Loyal to a fault, Rancisis was always a staunch traditionalist. He was not the least bit concerned for the accusations of treason. That was for courts to decide, not Jedi. But if Naruto had indeed resorted to the dark side even for a moment, then the possibility was there that it would take hold of him again more permanently the next time. The incident was tragic, but Jedi could be replaced in due time, but letting the dark side go unchecked was something that he would not stand for. The recent incident most likely put Rancisis against him. I didn't choose to use it, Naruto stated. It wasn't a total lie. The Kyuubi's power had blinded him to only one emotion, rage. But you just tapped into a few days ago, when you tried to attack Master Obi-Wan. Gallia spoke up as Naruto opened his mouth to speak but closed it. Gallia had just lost her former and possibly her most prized student. He couldn't just stand here and say that he didn't. That would be lying, and he wasn't a liar. I didn't choose to use it then either, it just happened. He responded. He should have been more careful with the Kyuubi seal weakened. Every day felt like he was losing control of his emotions, thus allowing the dark side to draw closer to him. Even now, he felt Kurama's chakra clawing at his mind, telling him that if he just accepted his power, he could overwhelm the council and break free. But that would only stain Siri's name further. There was no way around their argument. He had used the dark side, almost willingly, and he felt so lost. He could argue that the dark side had saved him and the surviving younglings from Grievous, but if he did then the Jedi would be correct about suppressing one's stronger emotions, and he would not allow them that satisfaction. Emotions were what made him strong, what made him want to fight and protect the things he cared about. He had inherited Plo Koon's justice, Kid Fisto's serenity, and Shakti's humility. He adopted Obi-Wan's prudence, Ahsoka's humors, and Siri's determination. He passed on his valor to King, his wisdom to Fox, and his individualism to all the men serving under him. So then you have no control over your own actions. The dark side just takes hold of you whenever you face the slightest of trials. Ransisis accused. This elicited a frown from Windu and Yoda, as well as Naruto's old masters. I can fix this, I just need time. I have to return to my homeworld to Naruto began, but Master Ransisis had heard enough excuses. You have had all the wisdom and knowledge of the Jedi Order for 2 decades to prevent this. What hell could you possibly find on such a primitive world? Ransisis was almost shouting. There are some things that go beyond even the knowledge of the Jedi, Master Ransisis. Plo Koon rose to Naruto's defense just as loudly. That doesn't change the fact that he has used the dark side and is a traitor to the Republic. Ransisis howled back. What does using the dark side have to do with accusations of treason? Is it against the law to use the dark side? Naruto joined the shouting match in protest. The council was not seeing the bigger picture, they were focusing on the most minute of mistakes he made in the moment. Enough. Mace Windu roared. He had thought the Jedi Council was above petty bouts of yelling, but he was clearly mistaken. His voice had done what level heads should have, and the chamber was filled with nothing but silence. Master Windu, we have already made our decision. Why do we waste time hearing this traitor's last rites? Ransisis answered more calmly through his hologram this time. Decision? What decision? Naruto wondered. This couldn't be anything good. Master Uzumaki, though not all of us are in agreement, it is the opinion of this council that you have committed acts of sedition and treason, and you will be expelled from the Jedi Order for the time being. Windu delivered the final blow to Naruto's fragile psyche, and the blonde Jedi that had once been their comrade in arms, was now just a man. Naruto let his thoughts stew for a moment, not paying any attention to the continued thoughts. This was exactly what the Sith wanted. Now they could lock him in a cell where he couldn't dare to uncover their plans. This Sith that was hiding among the senators was far more cunning than the entirety of the Jedi Council, that was certain. The Order's disregard for emotions left them weak and ineffective. It was not his fault that the Order was too weak to put down those who fanned the flames of war. Even now that those who profited and some who were the cause of this war sat in the Senate, passing down judgment. The Order had failed him, they had failed everyone. This is all your fault. Naruto accused them all, causing them to look at him in surprise. What did he mean by that? Naruto looked up at them, as they sat high on their chairs, looking down at him, as if they had any right to judge him. You became complacent to the peace that had reigned over 1,000 years. You allowed corruption and greed to take hold in the Senate. You made the Order too passive, too arrogant. You disarmed the Order long before the war. Naruto continued his rant as the dark side grew more and more powerful within him. We did no such thing. We are keepers of peace first, defenders of the Republic second. Windu countered as Naruto chuckled at that with a hint of sinister irony. All this pain, death, suffering, this entire conflict. The war would never have happened if you had chosen to root out the conspirators before Dooku gained so much power. But no, you're still holding on to the belief that the Sith have been dead for a millennium. That's what's driven you to become lazy and complacent. You didn't believe Dooku when he said that his master had control over the Senate, but this entire incident basically proves it. How the masters of the old would roll in their grave if they saw what the Order has become. Ineffective peacekeepers who only keep the peace while they can still pretend to not be soldiers. Naruto shouted as the council looked shocked at him. Naruto, please calm down. Plo Koon reasoned with his former student. Despite what had happened, Naruto was someone who he considered as a son. He would support the blonde, but his actions were making it harder for him to argue for him. Calm down, how can I be calm? The Sith move in the shadows against the Order. Against the galaxy. Against me. You think they're dead and gone, but they've just changed tactics, and you're still clinging to 1,000 years of the same old same old. You're the ones who killed those younglings. You're the ones who killed my sister. Naruto shouted as he closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face as he fell to his knees. Why can't you just trust me? I could never harm Siri, every one of you should know that. He tried to reason again as the council looked at him. Gallia's eyes softened as she watched the blonde Jedi writhe in anguish. He could never harm Siri. Her former student used to go on and on about her dear little brother. This was not a man who would betray the Republic without a clear and serious reason. Something was wrong. That's enough. Come Naruto. I will assume responsibility for him. Shakti spoke up as she stood up from her position and approached her former student before talking him outside the chamber, without any regard to the council's opinion on the matter. The poor boy's mind was not in an emotional stable state, and she felt that the Order was rushing things. As she left with him, the council room was left in a pregnant silence as everyone looked at each other. Finally, Kid Fisto broke the silence. I have trained Naruto when he was a child, and I know for a fact that a traitor he is not. Something is wrong here and we know it. Fisto stated as Plo Koon nodded. The two believed Naruto's side of story. This was clearly the work of a Sith. They were concerned about the dark side, but they knew that it was the result of the Kyuubi taking over, most likely after seeing Siri being killed by Grievous. Did Naruto lose control, despite what others say that it was Naruto who killed Siri? The others were more concerned about the dark side. They feared what it might do when a Jedi as powerful as Naruto become corrupted by it. We will discuss this later. Windu stated as he stood up to leave. Something was indeed amiss. Outside the council chambers, Shakti led the blonde Jedi through the halls of the temple. She was not convinced that Naruto killed Siri or even staged the ambush. In all her time as his teacher, she knew that Naruto placed loyalty above all. It's okay. She comforted him as he cried on her shoulder. He had lost someone dear to him and was being blamed for a crime he did not commit. Nothing's okay. Everything's going to shit, Naruto responded as his eyes started to dry up. Shakti sighed as she looked at him. He was like a son to her, and to see him on such pain brought her no joy. Come now Naruto, I know you didn't do what they claim you did. I will defend your case as she'll Master Fisto and Plo Koon, but remember that Master Windu said for the time being. We don't have the time to conduct a full investigation, we need more time. We will do our best to ensure that you aren't given the death penalty. When the war is over, we will demand a rehearing of your trial with a new chancellor. One that isn't as eager to sweep things under the rug as Palpatine. Shakti stated as Naruto raised an eyebrow before smiling. At least he knew that there were some people he could rely on. He had 3 masters who were backing him because they believed in him. Thank you, Master Shakti, but it isn't enough. Naruto thanked her as he bowed. Shakti was taken aback. The opinion of 3 Jedi is meaningless when 9 others are too blinded to see the truth. It was actually 4, Adigalia was a new camp as well. Shakti stated. She hated seeing her one student being thrown to the wolves. I know you won't like it, but I have to return you to your cell. Naruto nodded. The temple guards escorted him to his cell, leaving Shakti to her thoughts. The Public Judiciary Central Detention Center, 1 week later. Ahsoka was not having a good week. She had wanted to see her big brother, Naruto, but they kept denying her a visit after she was cleared from the medbay. Her wounds weren't serious, but she could only imagine what kind of turmoil Naruto was in right now. But she couldn't help. No one believed her story. Her report was completely glossed over by the authorities. To them she was just a fresh Padawan who was highly biased in Naruto's favor. The dark side swirling within and the evidence against him had far more weight than a Padawan's word. With the order having thrown Naruto to the wolves and the Republic eager to sweep the incident under the rug, Ahsoka made a daring choice. This was a last-ditch attempt to visit Naruto in prison, despite the order having commanded her to stay away from him. Walking closer to his cell, she noticed 2 Jedi Temple guards patrolling. Narrowing her eyes, she looked up to find a way in and behold she found a ventilation shaft. Jumping up, she quickly opened it and proceeded to make her way to Naruto's cell. Good thing I'm small enough to pass through these things. Ahsoka muttered to herself as she kept crawling through the old vents of the temple. When she was younger, she and Naruto used to pull pranks a lot, and the vents were an easy way to escape. These weren't much different. Ahsoka dropped into the front of the cell silently, but her presence in the Force was not masked from the former Jedi Master. Get the hell away from me. I'm not answering questions and I won't listen to any more of your lies. She heard Naruto's voice from the corner of the cell, but it wasn't the kind voice that he was known for. No, this time it was filled with disdain and frustration. A restraint hung around his neck as he sulked in the corner. Naruto. She spoke quickly as Naruto looked over his shoulder at the familiar voice. Ahsoka, what are you doing here? He questioned her as she walked up to him. I came here to see you. There are some things we need to talk about. She responded as Naruto closed his eyes and sighed. Ahsoka, you can't help me. Don't even think about asking. Naruto waved it off. The masters have told me that. She stated as Naruto looked at her for a bit before sighing. What is it? He questioned her as she sat down on a chair next to him. Back on island, I had these visions. Visions of you fighting the other masters, of villages burning. A 3 women hunting people down. A pale-skinned man who can control sand. I don't know what these visions mean. Master Yoda told us all that each Padawan encounters their own images in the caves, but what do mine mean? I've never seen any of those places, and I could barely understand what they were seeing. It seemed like it was ancient Mandalore, but Ahsoka questioned as Naruto mulled over these visions, but his mind was still clouded by the dark side within. Kurama's influence was keeping him from thinking clearly. After a tense pause, he finally breaks his silence. Ahsoka, tell me more about these places. What about the man who controls sand? What was he doing? Naruto didn't know anything about 3 people, but something about sand and Mandalore seemed familiar, and it wasn't just because the planet had been turned into a desert. He was standing in a village. The whole place was on fire. I think he was attacking it for some reason. His skin was pale as snow and his eyes were red with these weird symbols in them. Naruto's heart began to beat life back into his body for a moment. Was the man wearing a headband? What kind of shape did it have on it? Naruto was wondering if these events were really from Mandalore or was it possible they were from. No, he wasn't wearing one. But there was this red-haired boy with something like that wrapped around his bandolier. I couldn't see it very well. He was slumped over in the man's arms. I think he was dead. Ahsoka remembered the vision as best she could. Naruto was completely silent for an entire minute. Did this village have 4 stone faces carved into the mountain? He finally asked. Yeah, it did. How did you know that? Unless you've been there before. Naruto again fell into silence. It was probably for the best that Ahsoka didn't know the truth. He contemplated his next words carefully, but again Kurama kept his mind clouded. Ahsoka, I want you to give up on becoming a Jedi. Naruto at last said grimly. What? But why? They explained everything to me. They're going to get you out of here after the war is over. Naruto wanted to believe that, he really did, but he knew that was a foolish pipe dream. Guards, there's an intruder in my cell. Naruto called out, and the rush of footsteps could be heard outside. By that time it will be too late, but please trust me. I'm not saying this entirely out of selfish reasons. I can't protect you from in here. She looked at him in a mix of shock and anger. She was sick and tired of being treated like a stupid kid. I don't need you to protect me anymore. I'm a Padawan now. I still have a lot to learn, but you had to start somewhere too. Don't let your feelings about me get in the way. Ahsoka vouched for herself desperately, but Naruto knew the storm that was coming for the Republic. She heard the particle shield behind her slide open, but she kept staring into his eyes. They were the bright blue sapphires they were before. They were clouded with a mist of red swirling within. This was not Naruto. Not anymore. The real Naruto wasn't such a defeatist. Leave the order now, Ahsoka. It's for the best that you disappear from the galactic stage. He says to her as the guards gripped Ahsoka firmly under the shoulder Ahsoka and began to drag her out. Wait. Let me talk to him. Naruto, I need to know more. She pleaded, but the guards would have none of it. They dragged her away, being none too gentle as she struggled as tears started to well in her eyes. Why wouldn't they just let her talk to him? She used the force to throw the guards back and slammed her fists on the reactivated particle shield. Please Naruto, don't leave me. You can still find your way out of this somehow. She was pleading desperately for Naruto to do anything, but he simply turned back into his corner and sat down to meditate. There was nothing anyone could do for an expelled Jedi. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.